I thought my mother-in-law was perfect, until I discovered the truth about my husband's birth. For years, I believed my mother-in-law, Eleanor, was the picture of perfection. Her home looked like something out of a high-end lifestyle magazine. Everything, always in its place, not a speck of dust to be found. Her clothes were impeccable, her makeup flawless, and her words carefully chosen, wrapped in politeness, but often edged with something sharper underneath. Every month, my husband Liam and I made the familiar drive to visit her, and every month she welcomed us with the same warm, well-rehearsed greeting. "Oh, my dear, I've been waiting for you," she would exclaim, standing tall at the front, door in a perfectly tailored suit. Her silver-streaked hair was always styled in a tight, controlled bun, not a strand out of place. Her skin glowed in a way that made me think she either spent a fortune on skincare or simply willed herself into looking that composed. When she hugged me, it was always the same, light, distant, and accompanied by an air kiss that never quite landed. She would then turn her attention to Liam with a fond but critical eye. "Liam, darling, you've lost weight again. Is this how your wife feeds you?" she would ask sweetly, with a tone that was sugar-coated yet somehow left a bitter taste in my mouth. I would smile, even if it felt forced. Everything in Eleanor's world was just a little too perfect, too polished. It always seemed like we were guests in a carefully constructed scene, not family sharing time together. That weekend began no differently than the others. The house smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. Liam dropped his coat on the pristine, white sofa, a move that I could tell made Eleanor flinch inside, though she didn't say a word. Dinner was served with silver cutlery, matching plates, and polite conversation. Nothing out of the ordinary, just another well-rehearsed evening. But later that night, as the house settled into silence, I went into the kitchen to make myself a cup of tea. It was a small thing, a moment of quiet, but it turned into something much bigger. As I reached for a mug on the higher shelf, my elbow brushed against the napkin holder and it fell with a sharp clatter onto the floor. When I bent down to pick it up, I noticed something odd. There was a small, barely visible drawer in the sideboard, one that had been left slightly open. I didn't remember seeing it before. At first I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. Slowly I slid the drawer open. Inside, tucked away in the shadows, was a single envelope, yellowed with age and sealed tightly. The handwriting on the front was elegant, old-fashioned. It read, "To Liam, from your father." My heart skipped a beat. Liam's father had supposedly died before he was born. That's what Eleanor had always told us. It was a story she repeated with certainty, the kind that doesn't invite questions. According to her, he had passed away tragically young, an accident, a loss, a closed chapter. But this envelope suggested something different, something hidden. A chill crept down my spine as I held the letter in my hands. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I knew this wasn't something I could ignore. There were secrets in this house, and this letter, this quiet, fragile envelope, held one of them. I didn't tell Liam right away. Instead, I told Eleanor we would stay a little longer, that weekend. She smiled and said she was pleased, but I could sense the shift in her. Maybe she already knew I had found something. Maybe she had been guarding this secret for years. I kept thinking about Liam, how he had grown up without a father, how he had imagined what it would be like to have one. I remembered once, after a friend's father took them all fishing, he had said to me quietly, "If my dad were alive, he'd take me fishing too." I had brushed it off back then, thinking it was just a wistful thought. But now, holding that letter, I wondered if it had been more than a dream, if his father had been alive, somewhere, somehow, and if Eleanor had kept that truth from him. I looked around that spotless house, the place where every detail was carefully controlled, and I realized that beneath all the perfection, something had always been hidden, and now I was ready to uncover it. "If my dad could see me now," Liam would mutter under his breath during soccer games, brushing the dirt off his jersey after a rough tackle. There was always a wistful note in his voice, like he was speaking to someone who had only ever existed in dreams. He never knew his father, only stories. Stories his mother told him, wrapped in ribbons of nostalgia and silence. My husband was gentle and open-hearted, the kind of person who always saw the good in people. He was kind, sometimes a little naive, and still held on to a childlike wonder about the world. He believed people meant well, especially his mother. If she told him the sky was green and the grass was blue, he'd probably try to find the poetry in it before questioning her. If she was hiding something, he would never believe it without undeniable proof. I knew that. That's why I couldn't just walk up to him and say, "Honey, your mother has been lying to you your entire life." I needed to be certain before I shattered that trust, before I broke something that could never be unbroken. So we stayed. That morning, as the sun slipped in through the curtains and warmed the kitchen floor, Liam kissed my cheek with the same gentle affection he always did. "You ladies have fun today," he said with a wink, grabbing his keys before heading off to help a neighbor with some landscaping work. He left without knowing that everything was beginning to unravel. I turned back to Eleanor. Her smile was as polished as ever, and her presence, as always, carried the air of control. I brought her a fresh cup of coffee, hot, black, served in delicate porcelain painted with tiny violets. "Oh, how thoughtful of you, dear," she said, accepting the cup with the kind of practiced grace usually seen on award show stages. I watched her carefully, noting every movement, every flicker in her expression. We began with small talk, as always. I complimented her blooming geraniums, commented on the embroidery of the napkins she always had arranged perfectly on the table. White, linen with pale pink thread. She smiled, nodded, responded politely, never giving too much away. But I was waiting. I knew it was coming. It always did. And then, as predictable as a page in a well-worn script, Eleanor placed her cup down with a soft clink and tilted her head ever so slightly. "You and Liam have been married for a few years now," she began, her voice laced with polite curiosity. "Isn't it time for children?" There it was, the golden question. One she asked every time we were alone. Always framed as concern, though it carried the subtle pressure of expectation. I didn't dodge it this time. "Liam is very delicate about this subject," I said slowly. "Probably because he never knew his father. It makes the idea of having his own child a bit difficult for him." I watched her closely and just, as I suspected, her expression changed, but only for a moment. A tiny flicker, a brief hesitation before her smile returned, and that was it, the first crack in her perfect mask. "Eleanor," I asked gently, "what was Liam's father like?" She kept her eyes on her cup. "Oh, he was a wonderful man." "What did he do?" I asked. "Business," she said quickly. "How long were you two together?" She looked at me then. Not angry, not annoyed, just calculating. She set her cup down again and gave me a look that felt final. "Some memories are best left in the past, dear." It was a quiet dismissal, delivered like a soft curtain falling over a scene. Firm but elegant. A drop it, disguised as motherly wisdom. But I wasn't going to drop it. I sipped my coffee and smiled, pretending to accept her answer. Inside, my resolve tightened. There was a secret, and Eleanor was guarding it with the kind of quiet intensity reserved for precious heirlooms or locked diaries. The following evening, Liam worked late, helping a neighbor finish planting trees in their yard. Eleanor had dinner plans with friends, a charity event at the club. She dressed in her usual tasteful outfit, spritzed on her floral perfume, and left with a wave. The moment her car disappeared down the driveway, I moved. I walked straight to the sideboard in the dining room. My heart beat faster with every step. I reached for the napkin holder again, the one I had accidentally knocked over days before. I moved it carefully this time and opened the small drawer behind it. There it was, the envelope, just as before. Yellowed paper, elegant script. To Liam, from your father. I didn't open it. Not yet. But this time I took my time examining it. I traced the handwriting with my finger, scanned the corners of the envelope, and finally noticed something I hadn't before. 2 names, a first and a last. I stood frozen for a moment. Then I grabbed my laptop. I typed the name into a search bar, unsure what I would find. But then, after some digging, something popped up. A 10-year-old newspaper article from a local community blog. A local auto shop owner talks about fulfilling his dream. I clicked the link and scrolled slowly. There, buried in the middle of the article, was the line that made my breath hitch in my throat. "I once had a wife and a son, but they're no longer in my life. I don't want to talk about it." That was it. That was him, the man Eleanor claimed had died before Liam was even born. The man who had been erased from their story like he'd never existed. I found the name of his auto shop. I found the address. It was hours away, but if I left right then, I'd get there by sunrise, just in time for opening. I made a quick sandwich, filled a thermos with tea, and left a note on the kitchen counter for Liam. "Staying at a friend's. She needs me. Back tomorrow." It wasn't a lie. Not really, because right then I needed answers for both of us. The drive was quiet, dark. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of me, lined with distant lights and the occasional curve. The radio played soft, nostalgic songs, familiar voices from long ago, but inside, I was anything but calm. My thoughts were a storm, colliding and spinning with every passing mile. Was Eleanor really capable of such a lie? Had she hidden a living, breathing man from her own son for decades? As the hours passed and the sky began to lighten, the world around me slowly came alive. I passed through sleepy towns, gas stations, and quiet fields, until finally I was close. 10 kilometers, then 5, then 2. I entered a small town with colorful flags hanging between lampposts. People waved at strangers, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your story. The auto shop sat on the edge of town, modest, weathered, with a faded wooden sign that read, "Whitman Auto and Repair." It had just opened for the day. I pulled into the gravel lot, parked, and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Then I stepped out, heart pounding, feet steady. I walked toward the shop. Inside, the smell of motor oil and grease hit me instantly. The sound of tools clinking echoed faintly in the back. Behind the front counter, a man in his 60s stood, wiping his hands with an old stained rag. His hair was peppered with silver, his frame still strong, though his posture showed signs of time. He looked up as I entered. For a moment, neither of us spoke, and then I said quietly, "Are you Michael?" His brows furrowed. "Yes. Can I help you?" I stepped forward. Without answering right away, I reached into my bag. My fingers found the envelope, the one marked, "To Liam, from your father." I pulled it out and held it toward him. "A long time ago," I said. "You wrote this to your son, Liam." He didn't move at first, just stared at the envelope like it might disappear if he blinked too hard. Then slowly, he exhaled, the breath heavy and uneven. What? He whispered. I turned my phone around and showed him a picture. Liam standing by our garden, sunlight, in his hair, smiling. This is your son, I said. He's alive. Michael's eyes didn't leave the screen. His mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. Finally, he looked at me. No, that's not possible. His hands trembled as he reached out, stopping just short of touching the envelope. I was told, he said slowly. Eleanor told me. She said he died. I held his gaze. She lied. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Michael sat down heavily on a nearby stool, rubbing a rough hand over his face. His fingers left faint streaks of grease behind. I spent years trying to see him, he said quietly. I begged her. I wrote letters. She told me to stop, said it was confusing for him. And then one day, she sent me a final letter, said he was gone, that there was no point anymore. I swallowed hard. The weight of it all felt real in that small, cluttered garage. Eleanor is my mother-in-law, I said. She cut you out of their lives. Told Liam you died before he was born. Michael nodded absently, still staring at the letter in my hand. I didn't fight it after that last letter. I believed her. I thought maybe it was my fault, that I hadn't been enough, that Liam would be better off without me. So I left, moved here, built something for myself. But I never stopped thinking about him. He looked up, eyes glassy. And now, you're telling me he's alive? Yes, I said softly. Liam is my husband. He doesn't know about you, but he's always wondered. He's said things like, what if my dad were alive? And I wish I could ask him this or that. He deserves to know. Both of you do. Michael's shoulders slumped. I don't even know if he'd want to meet me. I shook my head. That's not your choice to make. It's his. He looked at the floor, nodded slowly, and let out a long breath. Then I guess it's time the truth comes out. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sky was already bright, and the air was warm. Eleanor stood near the front steps, arms folded across her chest. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look worried. Just ready. She didn't wait for me to step out of the car before she spoke. Her voice was cool and sharp. You've had quite the night, haven't you, dear? I stepped out and closed the car door quietly behind me. I don't know what you mean. Oh, don't be coy, she said, walking a little closer. I went to make my tea this morning and found my kitchen in disarray. A certain hidden drawer conveniently left open. She paused, her eyes on mine. Would you happen to know anything about that? I didn't flinch. As a matter of fact, I said, I do. I turned and walked toward the house. She followed. Once inside, I set the envelope on the kitchen counter. Its presence felt loud even in silence. Eleanor's eyes immediately found it. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes darkened. This is none of your concern, she said, her voice low. No, I agreed. It's not, but it is Liam's. Right then, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Liam appeared, in his usual morning state, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, yawning as he rubbed his eyes. He paused when he saw us standing in the kitchen, the tension in the room impossible to miss. He frowned. What's going on? Eleanor straightened quickly, smoothing the fabric of her robe with a practiced hand. Nothing, darling, she said. Your wife and I were just discussing boundaries. Liam turned to me, confused. Boundaries? What is she talking about? I took a breath, the kind you take before stepping off a ledge. I need to tell you something. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Don't! But I didn't stop. I looked at Liam and said the words that had been weighing on my heart. Your father is alive. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. What? I reached for the letter and slid it across the counter toward him. I found this in your mother's drawer, I said. It's from him. He wrote to you. Liam looked down at the envelope. He didn't touch it. He didn't say anything. He just looked at it, then looked at his mother, waiting. She met his eyes and lifted her chin. Sweetheart, don't listen to this nonsense, she said smoothly. That man left us. I spoke up before he could reply. That man didn't leave. He was pushed out. Eleanor's voice grew cold. You have no idea what you're talking about. Liam's gaze bounced between us, his confusion deepening. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet but firm. Mom, just tell me the truth. Did you tell my father I was dead? The question landed in the air like a sudden crack of thunder. Eleanor didn't respond at first, but something in her face shifted. A tiny flicker, barely there. But Liam saw it. He recognized it for what it was. A flinch. His expression crumbled as realization set in. Jesus Christ, he whispered. You did, didn't you? Eleanor's composure wavered for the first time in a long while. Her voice, when it came, was sharp, clipped. I did what was best for you. Liam took a step back as if the words had physically struck him. His chest rose and fell in heavy, uneven breaths. Best for me? He repeated. You let me grow up thinking I had no father, that he was gone, dead, a mystery I'd never solve. And the whole time, he was alive? You don't understand, she started. No, I don't, he cut in. So maybe you should explain. Eleanor looked cornered, her hands gripping the fabric of her robe. He was not the man you imagined, she said, her voice quieter now. He wasn't polished. He wasn't educated. He was rough. He worked with his hands. He wasn't someone I ever saw myself raising a child with. I watched her carefully, remembering all the moments she had acted like perfection was a virtue, like grace and refinement were the only traits that mattered. She continued, I wanted you to grow up with good manners, proper schooling, culture. I wanted you to fit into a world that would have rejected him. I shook my head, unable to keep silent. That wasn't your decision to make, Eleanor. It was Liam's. It was his truth to live. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked away, as though even now, admitting guilt was too much to bear. Liam's voice broke the silence again. It was softer this time. I can't deal with this right now, he said, almost to himself. Where is he? Where is my— He paused. The word seemed stuck, as if saying it would make everything too real. Where is my father? I walked to the front door and opened it. Michael stepped in slowly, his hat in his hands, eyes flicking around uncertainly until they landed on Liam. The room stilled. Father and son looked at each other. The years between them, the lost birthdays, the childhood memories never made, the moments stolen, hung heavy in the space. They didn't speak right away. There were no grand gestures, no tears, just two people staring at each other, both searching for traces of themselves in the other. Eleanor's breath caught. Her hands fell to her sides. You were too rough, she whispered. Too simple. I never expected to have a child with you. And when I did, I wanted something more for him. I wanted him to grow up different. She paused, then added with an edge of regret. But no matter what I did, he still reminded me of you. The way he moved, the way he smiled. I couldn't stop seeing it, so I had to remove you from the equation. Liam looked at her, and his voice, though calm, was filled with something deeper. I am who I am, Mom, and your elegance and perfection. None of that ever made me happy. I never wanted to be the perfect son you could show off. I just wanted to be me. I needed a father who'd let me be messy, who'd let me run through the yard, fall on the ground, rip my jeans without calling it disgraceful. Michael's voice broke the silence, hesitant and heavy. I don't know what to say. Liam looked back at him, his gaze gentler now. He reached forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. You can start with, hello. A small broken laugh escaped Michael's lips. His eyes glistened. Hello, son. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But in that simple greeting, something shifted. Something healed. Eleanor didn't say another word. She turned slowly, quietly, and walked toward the kitchen. Her movements were still graceful, still practiced, but different now, weighed down. I watched her go, wondering whether to follow, to say something. But the silence felt right, so I let her go. Outside, Liam and Michael sat together. At first, they just talked, quiet words, slowly becoming stories. They sat under the shade of the tree, leaned against the porch, railing, and walked side by side down the street. Two strangers trying to understand what they had lost, and what they could still have. They stayed out there until the sky turned gold with the setting sun. It was as if time, having stolen so much from them, had finally slowed down to give them this. Later, I found Eleanor in the kitchen. She was seated at the small table, hands clasped in front of her. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, even as she kept her posture straight, her face composed. I walked in slowly, not wanting to startle her. Then gently, I placed a hand on her shoulder. You have to let him have this, I said softly. Even if Michael isn't the man you wanted for yourself, even if he's not part of your family anymore, he's still Liam's. And for Liam, he might be the world that was taken from him. Eleanor didn't answer right away. She pressed, her fingers to her lips, her chin trembling. I'm afraid, she said finally, afraid that he'll never forgive me. I exhaled, poured her a cup of coffee, and set it gently beside her. He will, I said. She gave a quiet nod and wiped her tears away with the edge of her sleeve. For the first time since I had met Eleanor, we weren't exchanging pleasantries or keeping up appearances. There were no roles to play, just two women sitting in a quiet kitchen, facing the truth, flawed, honest, and human. Not perfect, but maybe finally better.